All right, we'll be starting now. So welcome to Integrator IO webinar series. These are the set of webinars we have created specifically to highlight certain product feature areas. So we welcome you all for taking your time to attend this webinar. Today, the focus is all about building your first integration, and we'll be using a good amount of time today for Q&A. We've assembled a very good experts in our panel today, which will be able to answer any specific questions with your experience so far. So first of all, let me start and begin with thanking you all, especially as you may have seen, our iPass, the modern iPass is generally available, and we love all the hundreds and hundreds of users who are already signing up, even though we have not announced it fully to the world. A lot of our existing customers are just learning through our website. So we have, just to quantify some of those metrics, in just few weeks, we have 200 plus unique users who have signed up and opened their IO account. And with the products which are already built on Integrator IO and some DIY flows, we are processing on an average about 40,000 records per day. This is just within next 6 weeks since the launch. So a lot of excitement, and this is going to, of course, quadruple in months to come. And we are here to make you guys also successful in adopting this platform and make all your integration pain points go away. So for that, today we have two expert panelists here with us. One, Chris Beidelman. He's our integration practice manager. He's been with Sligo for well over 5 years. He has served in a variety of roles, including running some high-profile projects and many complex integrations. And he's been also a solution architect for many of those. We also have Jonathan Burney, who is our engineering lead. He's also with Sligo for 5 years. Together, between them, they may have well over hundreds and hundreds of integration projects for successful rollouts. And he's also one of the key contributors towards Integrator IO with first few integrations which are going live and have gone live with the platform. So with this, let me transfer it over to Chris Badelman, who would be taking you with your first integration.
Thank you, Amit. As Amit said, we have been using this tool ourselves as a professional services organization. And what we wanted to do is be able to show you how easy that you can actually build some of your own integrations. Some of you may be familiar with our earlier version of an Integrator DIY or do-it-yourself. And so this is definitely a next generation. We take leaps and bounds ahead of competition and the things that we've done, and as you can see today, how easy and how quickly you can be up and running with your very first integration. So we went through the overview, and what I'm going to do is create sort of two different data flows for you, and we'll show you what the use case here is. And then, as Amit said, we'll leave plenty of time at the end for any questions you may have. So let's get started. So here's our use case today. We do this quite often for a lot of our customers, and now has a chance to be able to do this yourselves. So your use case is you want to be able to send new sales orders that are in your NetSuite system. And it doesn't really matter how those orders come in. It could be through your call center entering them in manually. You can have maybe a Shopify or Magento or Amazon. These orders are coming into your system. So what you want to do is be able to send these to your third-party logistics or 3PL, or you may be using a different system for your warehouse management system. You just need to be able to get those orders out to them so they can pick, pack, and ship those orders. So once they have been shipped, the idea then is to be able to bring in those orders into your NetSuite system and have information like tracking numbers and the date they shipped and the ship method, so an email can go out to automatically to your customers using the core NetSuite functionality for that. So today I'm going to show you how you can build these two different data flows very quickly, very easily, and today's method, just to keep things simple, we're going to use CSV or FTP to be able to move that data back and forth between those systems. So let me get out of here and actually jump into the demo. So what I have is a sales order that's in the NetSuite system here. It's something that was placed. It's just for a single item. I do need to ship this out as UPS ground and other information. And some of the setup here would be used a lot of the native NetSuite. For example, I have a saved search that has been set up to be able to have the criteria of what information, make sure it's in a pending fulfillment status, and then you can create your own results of what information you need to be able to send to that. So again, we're using native NetSuite saved searches, and the setup of that, any NetSuite admin can be able to do that. Because as you see within the I/O platform that we actually utilize this information to be able to connect directly with it. So there's your setup, and I have an order that's in pending fulfillment. So let me jump over to the Integrator I/O platform. Now I/O is a cloud-based system, as we talked about, iPaaS, as a platform, as a service, and allows you to be able to create different integrations. Just briefly, on the home page here, you can kind of see that you can create your own, which we'll do in a second. We also have some pre-built connectors, and as we build out the library of these different connectors, you can install these yourselves, set them up yourself, and be able to start using them right away. Shopify, for example, is one. Jira and Zendesk are some pre-built connectors. So again, this library is going to increase rapidly and be able to install those yourselves. We also have a data loader. We won't go into this too much here, but if you have questions later, we can certainly answer those. But this also allows you to be able to do mass updates to a particular system using CSV. So if you wanted to load a bunch of data into NetSuite or into Salesforce, or use a REST-based web store that you're using that you need to update your items, you can actually utilize this tool. So perhaps in another webinar we can go into more details about how this data loader works, but again, allows you to be able to do some mass updates to those systems. But today, let's go ahead and let's build our first integrations on its own. So as we talked about, we need to be able to go out and grab the information out of NetSuite to be able to do that. So what I need to do is create a data flow, and we have a wizard that sort of steps you through. So everything goes through these 4 steps. We're going to export out of the one system, we're going to import the data into another system, deal with the mappings, and then the setup associated with that data flow here. So the very first thing we're going to do is go ahead and actually, let me go ahead and show you. Right now, we have a couple different adapters. We have a NetSuite adapter that allows you to be able to know the structure of the NetSuite system. So there is no other mappings, or well, you still have to map the records, but no other connections that you have to do and any fancy things. They're already pre-built. Same thing with Salesforce. You're able to have an adapter to be able to connect directly with Salesforce objects to be able to move data in and out of that system. We also have a REST API connector where you can define the HTTP call and the JSON structures associated with that. And then there's also a library of webhooks. And if you're not familiar with webhooks, these are, consider them as events that happen within a web system. So for example, you can see there's already a library of several. So a lot of people are familiar with Jira. So if a new support case came into Jira, a webhook event could actually be published out that says, hey, I have a new case. And we could actually consume that webhook message from Jira and directly push that into NetSuite, for example, to update a case in that. So again, as more webhooks and more systems actually enable this type of new technology, then certainly we're going to keep growing this library. But you can see there's some very well-known names: Dropbox, Jira, Slack, Shopify is also on that, Stripe, which is a payment gateway. So that allows you to be able to do some really cool stuff. And again, you don't need to be a programmer to do any of this stuff. I'm certainly not a programmer. Let the guys who actually know that stuff. So we'll see how easy it is to set up even just being a business analyst. So as I mentioned, we're going to build our first flow out of NetSuite. I've already established a connection here, but this is very simple to do. I'll just show you. You just need to know your account, the role, the email, any passwords, and then if you have your NetSuite system with what's called Suite Cloud Plus, allows you to have multiple concurrent web sessions. You can actually define those, how many different web service connections you want at any time, and concurrency associated with that. And you can test it and make sure that everything's working okay there. We also have two different API integrations you can do with NetSuite. You can use their SOAP-based web services, or as they call it, Suite Talk. In our use case today, we're actually going to be using a RESTlet. And we also have execution type, be it real-time or scheduled. And just to make this thing simple, we're just going to go ahead and do a scheduled data flow here. So what I need to do is define what it is I want to export. In this case, I'm looking for sales orders. So I want to grab the sales orders. I want to find the saved search, and as I mentioned before, we have a established saved search. And again, this is because I am logged in to your NetSuite system. It would pick up any saved searches that you have made available or public, so it can be picked up. Now, when we export, we have different options that you can do. You can export all the data that is picked up by the saved search. We also have ability to do deltas. So it will pick, since the last time this data flow ran, it will pick up new records that were created. So this is a way that you can just send new orders to your 3PL since the last time this data flow ran. You can do it once and only once, and you can also be in test mode. But for today, we're just going to go ahead and send everything. And if there are some advanced features such as page size, if your 3PL can only handle one record at a time, or it needs, they can only do 100 at a time, allows you to be able to define some of those parameters. And there you go. So that's the first step. So now we're on to the second step. Now we have the data coming out. We need to say, where do you want to import the data to? In this case, as I mentioned before, we could send it to your NetSuite system, another REST API, Salesforce, but in this case, we're just going to do an FTP connection, just to keep things simple so you can all see it. Or we have an FTP site. You can also do SFTP. You can have which directory you want to use and other type of definitions that you would have for a FTP server. So a lot of 3PLs actually have FTP. You can host your own. I would define which path I want to find that. And here we have ability to be able to name the file. So for example, this particular 3PL needs to define what the name to be orders to fulfill, but we also want to be able to timestamp that. So we do have ability to actually add some masking on that. And we're using some handlebar technology, so I just did two curly open brackets to be able to bring up this dialog box of here's some different timestamps that you can add to the extension of that file name so they always become unique. So a common format for this is to use the day, month, year, and maybe a hour that you sent it. So I'll go ahead and grab this format, but I'm going to eliminate these dash marks here out of that format, so it just gives me the hours, minutes, days associated with that. So that's what my file name is going to look like. And here I need a file extension. So as I mentioned before, we're going to call it we're going to use a CSV file. If they need to compress it or zip it up, you have that ability to be able to do that. I'll show you how as far as a sample file when we do the other direction here. We also have a selection of different delimiters. You can use pipe, semicolon, commas, tab, space. But in this case, let's go ahead and create a comma-based CSV file. And I want headers so at least we can be able to see, what data fields we're going to have. And we have some other options that are available for that CSV file. So there you go. That's all you need to be able to at least set up the import. So now we get to the fun stuff as far as the actual data mapping, and we have some associated tools with that. So we hit create mappings. So as we mentioned before, since we've already defined what the saved search was, there is already some fields that have been established as far as the different fields that are coming up in the saved search that we need to be able to map here. So for example, let's go ahead and do the document number, which would be the order number. And the FTP site, they are expecting this, and we'll just call it order. The next thing that comes up, obviously you want to be able to define a date. We'll call date. And again, these are the fields that would be defined by the 3PL as far as what they need to have as the name of the files and the format things that come across. And from the saved search, name is actually what the customer is. So let's go ahead and call this customer. And we have some other abilities here that we can show. So for example, this is a very common thing that occurs. In NetSuite, as you know, you have different ship methods that are established, or ship via. So you may have UPS ground, overnight, and other things. But a lot of times 3PLs actually need a different code that they utilize for those types. So in those cases, we actually have, if you hit the little gear wheel over here, allows you to be able to do some manipulation to the code. You can define what the data type is. So in this case, we're going to be a string. You can hard code in values. You can do static lookup, and you can do multi-fields, which again, we won't get into today, but I want to do a static lookup. So in this case, this allows you to do some mapping. So for example, in NetSuite, a ship via is UPS ground, but actually what happens over in the 3PL, they need to be called that UPS 01 is their definition of what UPS ground is in their WMS system. So this allows you to be able to do these types of mappings as you go in. So FedEx might be over here, might be FedEx. So what this export will do is actually then be able to remap these and be able to load them into the data fields how they need to be received over at the 3PL. So you can also mark it if one of these new ship methods isn't found, we'll go ahead and log an error. And of course, if you want to ship some items, you need to be able to define what those items are. Other system needs a SKU, and then finally the quantity. And over in the other system, that is defined as QTY. I think that's all we need. So there you go. Now we have the mappings just that fast. And I'm just going to call this SO export NetSuite to 3PL. Define what this is. And with these data flows, you are able to schedule them. You have the ability to be able to create the crons so you can run them every 15 minutes, you can run them every hour, every 2 or 3 hours, depending on how you want to be able to send it, depending on the day of the week or day of the month. You only want it Monday through Friday. So this, again, allows you to be able to schedule how you want to run these particular data flows. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and manually run it, so I won't schedule that. So let's save that first data flow. And I think we are ready to run it. So as simple as hitting run, and as I mentioned before, you can schedule it, but any of these data flows can be run on demand. So if you wanted to push, you just got a bunch of new orders in and you want to push them directly to that, it'd be as simple as going to your Integrator IO dashboard here and hitting that run button, and it'll automatically run on demand for you. So you can see it's in progress, and if things go well and I paid the demo gods, we should have a successful export of the sales order out of NetSuite into the FTP server. And there it is. So thank goodness we got a successful export of that file. So let me just jump out to the FTP server and you actually see what the file looks like. And my CyberDuck's waiting. And there it is. So as I mentioned before, it did do the timestamp that we talked about to be able to name the file here. Let me just go ahead and drag this on my desktop so we can actually see it. And you can see what the file looks like. So as I mentioned before, here is the file, here's the export that was just sent out, and as we noted, the ship method did get translated from UPS ground to UPS 01, and the SKU and the quantity of that particular item. So now the 3PL has the order, and now hopefully they're going to go out, pick, pack, and ship, and that will take care of that. So there we go. There's the first data flow. We have an export. Now we need to reverse that. Let's go ahead and bring in a new order. So I've already set up a CSV file, which obviously looks very similar to the one we just had, to be able to create the fulfillments. What's a little bit different is obviously the date that was shipped, we have a different header, and then they're giving us a tracking number. So I'm just going to do a bogus tracking number here that we can translate in. So it works just the same way we just do it. So let's fly through this and you can be able to see how to do that. So in this case, our export is actually coming from the FTP because I need to go out and grab that file off the FTP server and tell it what path. So it's going to be in that same 3PL folder. Now we have an optional file name start. So as you can see, I already have a file, and actually what I'm thinking about, let me go ahead and just drag and drop this file in there so it's copied over. If you have a lot of different files that end up in the same file directory, this gives you a way to be able to filter out just grabbing the files you want, so ignore the other files that may be in that same directory. Best practices would have an inbound and outbound folder within the FTP server, so you don't have these things stacking up in the same folder. But again, that's just depends on the 3PL how they do that. So I'm going to go ahead and put a filter on there and just say, let's go ahead and anything with the orders to ship as a prefix, then it'll allow to do that. So here I want to be able to see what the CSV file. So we're able to bring in that CSV file as a sample. You tell it if it's what the delimiter is, and if it does have a header, which this one does. And that's really all we need on this page. And as I say, the second step is we just did before. Now we're going from FTP to your NetSuite system. And in this case, we are going to create a item shipment. Meaning, we're taking the sales order, we're going to transform that sales order into a new, and in this case, add, as opposed to doing an add or update, because in theory, these records should not exist. You're not going to ship things more than once. And if you do, you want to be able to throw an error. So we're going to add a new item shipment. So here's where we can, again, do the similar mapping. And as we said before, because I've already loaded in the sample CSV file. All the fields are listed here. So here's where things get a little bit, I don't want to say tricky. You need to be able to think about what the process is here. So for the case of the import, what I want to do is look up this order number, this sales order, and be able to transform that into a item fulfillment record. So, because remember, I need to be able to transform this fulfillment into, it goes into obviously create the fulfillment and it goes into pending billing. So in order to do that, you need to do this a little bit different, because what you're looking for is actually a create from, meaning I need to be able to create from a sales order to create that item fulfillment. So in order to do that, I'm going to use that field in the NetSuite record, and I'm going to do what's called a lookup. I need to look up the sales order using a dynamic search, and it'll take a second here for it to load. So you tell it, what do you want to search? What type of record type? Well, I want to look up sales orders in your NetSuite system, and I'm going to use the field that's in that CSV file. And in this case, from the CSV, it's, or actually, sorry, within NetSuite, the order number is the field I want to be able to look up. I want to look up on this order number field, this particular number, so I can find it. And in this case, order from the CSV file is that. So it's saying the order number is that. And as you can see, the lookup filter expression is being dynamically created. And then on the value field, once it finds that particular field, what do you want to return? Well, in our case, we want to return the internal ID of that record, of the sales order. And if, here's a little secret if you haven't noticed that on the URL, that little ID, that is actually the internal ID of that sales order, that 7989. So that, again, what this record of this dynamic search is doing is looking for a sales order that matches the order number and is going to return me the internal ID. And then that's what is going to load into the create from field into the item fulfillment or item shipment. So it's simple as that. The date shipped is going to be obviously the date. We want the date. You can start typing ahead and it'll bring up the fields you want. Let's go, oh yes, we have to do the ship method. And now remember the ship via, we have to kind of reverse what we did before as far as the static field lookup. So in this case, I'm getting a UPS 01, and this translates into a UPS ground for NetSuite. And again, you would load in all your different fields so you can reverse that mappings that you had before. So we'll just go ahead and do that particular one. We need obviously a SKU. We need the item within NetSuite. And in this case, we're looking for the item's name field, because since it is utilizing the SKU numbers, not the internal IDs associated with that, the quantity ship, and we end up with this similar sort of thing where the items, quantity, did the shipping, and now we have to go down and grab the tracking number. And in this case, within tracking number, it's actually part of the package sub list within that item fulfillment. Now here's something that if you ran this thing, it would error out. NetSuite also requires a weight associated with that package. Now, a lot of 3PLs won't send you that weight. So in this case, you probably just have to hard code in particular thing. So I'm just going to say, okay, everything's going to be 1 pound. Now, if they did actually send the weight of the package that was shipped out, then you can certainly map that. But in this case, just to make NetSuite happy, I'm just going to head hard code in a value of 1. So everything is good. So looking through, I think I have everything mapped that needs to be handled within that item fulfillment. We're going to save it, close it, move to the next step. And I'm going to call this fulfillment from 3PL to NetSuite. Again, you can provide your own description. You can set your own schedule of how often you want to sweep that particular FTP folder. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and manually set it up and save. So as we did before, we have the file that's sitting out there, out on the FTP server, and if all things run well here, I'll go ahead and run the fulfillment and hope that everything works, and we'll have a successful import of that CSV file. So you can see it dynamically updates, and if there were any errors that did occur, you would see them show up here. Error message would appear and be able to do that. As you can notice up at the top here, I'm hiding any empty jobs here. If I did have certain jobs that it was sweeping the FTP folder and didn't find anything, you'll see it does show up here that it did ran, but you can always use the hide empty job so you don't have to clutter your board here. And there you go. So we did get a successful import. So if all is good, if I do an update, which is a F5 for a refresh of your NetSuite, we should be able to see that now that it is in pending billing, which is yay, things worked. So if I go in history, look at the fulfillment, let's go ahead and open that fulfillment record. We can see that an item shipment has been created. It was get mapped to UPS ground. We did ship one of those things. The package, as you can see, did load in. It's 1 pound, and we did get a tracking number associated with that. And if you had your NetSuite system configured to automatically send out email notifications once a fulfillment record is created, then that would get emailed out with this information to your customers that their order has shipped. So there you go. We in about 20 minutes with me yapping away here, we were able to create 2 different data flows on your own to be able to export out of NetSuite to create a order export to your 3PL, and then be able to pull in a fulfillment and auto create and transform a order, as you noted, this create from sales order to a item fulfillment, and everything has been shipped and billed, and you have happy customers, and hopefully you're happy that you have now created your own first Integrator IO data flows. So there you go. Amit, why don't we go ahead
Sure.
and open it up to any
Thank you,
questions
Chris.
here, and I'll bring up the next screen.
Absolutely. So thank you, Chris. First of all, it seemed pretty easy to do with the drag and drop and all. But the bag, we all know, a simple integration like this can take a lot amount of time and stress. So thank you for illustrating that, and that's what we're trying to do with this platform, Integrator.io, to make those integration touch points appear simple to you. Um, so as we and Chris was alluding to, we have quite a good time available for Q&A. Any questions? I'm going to just raise your hand. I'm going to unmute your lines so you don't have to type any questions. You can just ask, and we have enough time to address those questions. It can be anything related to IO, your experience so far, any help you may need, anything like that. So let's see if I'm unmuting the lines. So please speak up. While you may be thinking about what to ask, I want to emphasize the slide you see right now in front of you is, of course, you have a lot of documentation available, which you can access through the Customer Compass. And that's all available through sligo.com. And there is some tutorials available, some videos available. As you look on Integrator IO, you can have there's certain integration scenarios provided to you as well. So you can open your account and see how you can use the power of this platform to integrate with any REST-based app or Salesforce or NetSuite or a combination of that. Right on the top is also videos available, Chris. If you can just navigate and click on the videos. So we have certain recorded videos. We in the current channel we have 4 videos already available. We'll be adding to this repository. So again, this is something you can share with your team. Um, so that's all we had for now. And if there is no further questions, I would just like to thank you for your time and perhaps ask you a simple set of questions. I know some of you guys are already dropping off. So just a quick poll if you want to respond to. Let me just do that and take a control as well. So for those who are still on the call, if you want to just quickly respond to this poll, please. All right. And as we said before, we will be doing more and more of these sessions. So I would like to get your input perhaps on what other topics which may be interest to you. So this is just the one last question, and then we can wrap this up. So again, data loader is a very powerful tool, allows you to load data into any REST-based app. We can take a deeper dive into that. There is a whole new way to do your own custom transformation that's called wrappers and hooks. We can do more and more DIY integration, just like what Chris did today. There's a concept of integration sharing. Again, we are going to take this topic up in our upcoming webinars. Um, there is a very powerful way to bring data from any application which supports webhook to start an integrator IO flow. So if any of these are interesting to you, please vote for it, and we'll be communicating it to you when those webinars would be available. Well, with that, thank you all and for attending in, and thank you to our panelists and speakers for available for walking you through this integration. So, further ado, you get 15 minutes of your time back in the day. Thank you.